toxins, first of all, are arguably the number one biggest physical problem we face today in terms of healthy aging and longevity.
Migrant workers in California that are being exposed to a lot of pesticides that are in wine country actually affecting their sex organs.
Significant studies show that drinking water is contaminated with pesticides.
But not all bottled water is created equal, and now you're drinking out of a plastic bottle, so microplastics are getting into your water and getting into your body.
Light has been shown to help in the aging process in many ways.
One of the best ways that we can immediately shift and work with our mindset and our spirit is to actually connect back to the planet that we live on.
You can really get into deep states of meditation and tranquility when you do that, and you always feel better when you do something like that.
When we love people, we give them the chance to transform into the very best version of themselves, but that can only happen in the container of unconditional love and acceptance.
Hey, it's Stefan here, your host for the Ageless docuseries. I hope you've been enjoying the series so far and have found a new perspective on healthy aging and many valuable takeaways on how you can achieve it. You're probably watching this from the comfort of your home, but what if I told you that your house can be the cause of premature aging? In this episode, you'll hear mind-blowing information on what causes toxicity in your home and surrounding environment and what you can do to protect yourself and your family. Before we get started with this episode, I need to remind you that our series will come to an end soon, which also means that Zonia's offer is about to end really soon, and the opportunity to get on-demand access to all 10 episodes of the Ageless docuseries will be gone forever. So if you haven't already checked out Zonia, I encourage you to pause the video and do it now. We release new health bites with exciting new protocols, methods, and tips every week. With the help of over 150 experts contributing weekly to Zonia, you'll finally get actionable steps for reducing the toxic load on your body. You'll discover groundbreaking information and innovative treatments and easy, proven to work steps you can do at home to create your own toxic-free oasis. And if you want to dive even deeper into the huge impact of toxic overload and how you can overcome it, you'll want to see our eye-opening 7-part docuseries called Toxin Free, available to you on demand inside Zonia as well. So check out Zonia now. It's where you can also watch today's episode and learn just how toxic our homes really are. This sounds ridiculous, but trust me, your kitchen, toilet, and even bedroom may only look clean on the surface. So do you consider your house to be the safest place? After hearing our doctors, you realize just how far from the truth that may be.
It's almost impossible to get through a day without being exposed to hundreds of toxins. And they range from the gasoline that you pump, to the water that you're drinking, to the air that you're breathing, to the products you put on your body, to the chemicals that are off-gassed from the bed you sleep on, the flame retardant from the bed you sleep on, to the chemicals off-gassed from cleaning your home. It's pervasive. And I haven't even really touched on what are women putting all over their bodies and their makeup, plus the things we clean our clothes with. It just keeps going. All these toxins, a fraction of them have been studied. About 500 of the 150,000 toxins that mankind has created, have been tested for safety. The other 149.5 haven't. And so it's almost impossible to get through a day without exposure to toxins, and these toxins impact our mitochondrial health. They impact our body's ability to function, and they impact our body's ability to rein in cancer-dividing cells, balance the blood sugar, balance the hypertension, and balance our weight, just to name a few.
So a lot of times people ask me about, what about environmental burden? I mean, I don't feel something coming in me necessarily. Sometimes they do. For example, if someone undergoes chemotherapy and they have a platinum-derived drug, that platinum could store in their bone marrow or in their tissues, right? But for the most part, you're eating tuna or you're eating sushi. I remember I had one bodybuilder in California who had cardiomyopathy, so his heart
This is Nate.
wearing out. He's 32 years old. And they brought me out to California. I was living in Ohio at the time, flew out there to see him. And I asked him, what do you do each day for your food? He says, well, I eat about 2 pounds of sushi. So he's eating 2 pounds of tuna, and we know it's high in mercury. So I did what was called a toxic metal urine challenge, which is, American Board of Pathology accepted, test. He had the highest level of mercury I'd ever seen, and to this day, I still have not seen. This was a while ago. We got the mercury out of him, returned him to normal health. So we all get exposed to things. Some of us are better at getting rid of these toxins than others. The problem that I see is that in general, people are being overwhelmed with toxicity. So one example would be in Parkinson's. There's been at least 15 papers published in the last 3 years about environmental toxins being the cause of Parkinson's for the most part, that it plays a big role in triggering the neurodegeneration. So whether it's pesticides or arsenic in our rice or arsenic that ends up in our chicken, we get exposed to various noxious compounds that begin to affect how our body is supposed to function. So we have enzymes in our body that run all the biochemical reactions going on in our body. When you get exposed to a pesticide or a toxic metal, those metals, for lack of a better term, they kind of insert themselves into the enzyme, and they can either change the way they function and activate them, or do what's called denature the enzyme, break it down. So now it forces your body to have to function in another way in order to survive. And unfortunately, that functioning in the other way typically involves driving inflammatory chemistry. I grew up in this world of integrative medicine and anti-aging medicine. I was so fortunate that I got trained by doctors that had been in Europe and abroad, and we're really at the forefront of looking at what we call now environmental medicine, environmental healthcare, because it's a huge part for people. We look at xenoestrogens, for example, right? Drinking from plastic containers that are high in bisphenol A or other xenoestrogens, and we're seeing women having more issues around female-related endocrine disorders because there's endocrine disruptors. Men, migrant workers in California that are being exposed to a lot of pesticides that are in wine country, actually affecting their sex organs. So I mean, the environmental burden, I think, is as important as anything when you're really looking at, well, where do I live? What am I getting exposed to? What have I been exposed to? How can I limit my exposures to various compounds in the environment? Because you know what? You can't stop breathing air. You can't stop drinking water. You may not be able to stop living in an urban area, but you can create processes to help you kind of mitigate the risk around that.
The result of premature aging in the body is chronic disease. When your cells age at a faster pace, this sets you up for heart disease, for cancer, for autoimmune conditions. And for the first time in decades, we expect that our children are probably not going to live as long as us or as our parents. And the cause of all of this aging is toxins in the environment. And it's coming into our food source, our water source, we're breathing it in, it's coming to us on our body products, our cleaning products, it's off-gassing from the interiors of our cars and from our furniture. And so really the answer to anti-aging is going to be reducing that toxic load in the body and reducing the rate of toxins coming into the body. And one thing, if you could do one thing at all to slow this down, stop drinking your toxins. And I'm talking about drinking purified water. Now, people get really proud that they drink their bottled water, but not all bottled water is created equal. And now you're drinking out of a plastic bottle, so microplastics are getting into your water and getting into your body. And the best thing to do is to have a purification system of your own. Now, there's a lot of different purification systems out there. There's reverse osmosis, there's the Berkey system, and then there's my favorite, which is distilled water. And people could get kind of uptight about distilled water because your mom told you, don't ever drink distilled water because you're not gonna get the minerals that you need, because in the distillation process, the minerals come out. But guess what else comes out in the distillation process? You remove radioactive elements, you remove chemicals, and in the final process, your water goes through a charcoal filter to remove VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So you end up with the most clear water you can possibly drink, and then you just remineralize it with organic minerals. Now, your body is made to absorb minerals from organic sources. Inorganic minerals are not absorbed as well, and the type of minerals in water is inorganic. So when you remineralize your water, use organic minerals. Now, my favorite system personally is distillation for this very reason. It's the only way to get radioactive elements out.
Toxins, first of all, are arguably the number one biggest physical problem we face today in terms of healthy aging and longevity. Some folks would argue not eating the right foods. Other folks argue the bombardment of toxins. They're both right because foods are a powerful weapon, if you will, against these toxins. And really, when you're looking at your overall health and well-being, after 20 some years now, deep in natural health and wellness, it really comes down to what do you strive to keep out of your body and your being, and what do you allow in? That's the golden equation for health and wellness in the first place. But when it comes to toxins specifically, there are some areas that people have pretty solid understanding about, thank goodness, 20 years ago it wasn't this way, but with food, a lot of people are conscious today of trying to eat organic. Many people, not everyone, but many people have heard of the Dirty Dozen. You know, the Environmental Working Group every year publishes a list of the dirtiest produce to try to avoid. If you are eating a fruit or a vegetable and you're going to consume the skin, try to go organic. If it is a skin contained around it that you typically take off, like an avocado, you're safer. That's the general equation when it comes to foods. But what other ways are you allowing toxins inside of your body? Well, when you breathe, you are consuming, you're eating air in a sense. And you're eating more air than you're eating anything else in a lifetime, by the way. When you drink water, obviously you're consuming. And guess what? When you apply products to your body, to your skin, you're eating. Your skin eats. A lot of people don't make that connection. But if you are conscious about the foods you allow into your body in terms of nutrition, as well as avoiding toxins and pesticides and processed and highly processed, and you're not as conscious about feeding your body or not feeding your body garbage by what you're applying to your skin, you're only fighting half a battle. So what I advocate to people is you can go from a room by room perspective in your home. And I can walk through every single room here, but let me walk through a few of the most prevalent that you need to walk through to reduce your toxin load. Start in the bathroom. It's pretty easy to go and swap out a lot of the cosmetics and personal care products that I guarantee you are loaded with toxins with healthier, safer, ideally organic choices. Now, a couple statistics here. The average woman in the United States consumes 12 personal care products a day that on average contain 168 different chemicals. Number two, here in the US, it is a wild west for what is allowed in personal care products and cosmetics. In the European Union and other countries, over 1,600 chemicals have been outright banned from cosmetics and personal care products. Here in the US, 11. That's it. It's an incredibly powerful industry, and I'm not just talking about the beauty industry, which is somewhere around $500 billion. That's really only a small part of the beauty industry. The beauty industry is the petroleum industry because so many of these chemicals that are allowed in are derived from petroleum. So let me make the connection for people. In other words, does it feel right that you're consuming petroleum? Because you are. When you use typical anti-aging creams, typical moisturizers, typical deodorants, and I can go on and on, so shampoos, soaps, you're feeding your body, by and large, a lot of petroleum-based products. In other words, from the ground, the same stuff that they get oil from and gas from, and et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't feel right, does it? We're not supposed to eat that. Well, you're right if you have that reaction, and yet people freely throw this stuff on their skin and in their hair and under their arms and in their mouths by brushing their teeth. Start there, because it is the biggest source of little-known toxins today. Thousands are allowed in these products. You don't have to become an expert at every ingredient. If you try to scan labels for the decent ones, the good ones, the excellent ones, you're going to go crazy. Again, thousands and thousands of ingredients, 1,600 banned in the European Union. Nobody's going to know all that. And there's many more on the docket that are under consideration to ban there. Again, here only 11 because it's a powerful industry and there's almost no regulation whatsoever. So with that in mind, support the companies out there, the toothpaste companies, the deodorant companies, the skincare companies. Support the companies that are striving to give you USDA certified organic versions of these, because that means they're truly clean. You know, and there are, if you live in another country and you're hearing this, there's EcoCert, there's other certifications out there, independent of anything the company can say, that you want to try to support. The good guys are trying to give you truly clean products to feed your body and skin. All right, so that's the bathroom. Now, there's other things in the bathroom, by the way. If you're cleaning your toilet with typical toilet cleaners, you don't put that on your skin every day. Granted, you might do that once a week, once a month. I don't know how often anyone cleans their bathroom. But those products are similarly loaded with some toxins, and there are alternative and easy ways to clean your toilet. Vinegar works. Baking soda works. You know, you can use these apple cider vinegar. Many people sanitize with that. You can take rubbing alcohol and wipe it down. I mean, there's so many, you don't have to do that. So the bathroom is a top source of little known toxins. I can walk through different ones. I can walk through the kitchen. That's obviously a top source. Let me jump to the other place. You spend more time than you realize. You spend 1/3 of your life in bed. 1/3 of your life, 8 hours a day if you're doing it right, 7 to 9, somewhere in that vicinity. And it's also one of the top sources of toxins. So you want to be mighty conscientious and careful in there too. And I'm not just talking the air inside the home. A lot of people have heard the air inside homes can be up to 100 times more polluted than outside. Well, I just repeated it because that's darn important to know, right? The air in your home can be loaded with toxins. I highly recommend to everybody to strongly consider the highest quality air filtration you could possibly afford. Even if it's a simple base model HEPA, much better than the alternative of nothing. Whatever you can afford, that is a worthwhile investment, I promise you. But what else is going on in the bedroom in this sense? You're breathing in toxins if you're using typical sheets, typical mattresses, typical pillows. Go organic here as well. That's mission critical as well for your health, sheerly because of the amount of time you spend breathing in this comfortable thing that you're pressing your face against. Go organic there as well.
Avoiding pesticides, both in your indoor air, and yes, pesticides are tracked into the home from outside and they come in with outside air, as well as avoiding pesticide residue in diet and pesticides in water. There are significant studies that show that drinking water is contaminated with pesticides. Atrazine is the second most common water contaminant, drinking water contaminant, and it's a very potent endocrine disrupting pesticide. So pesticides are neurotoxic. So another toxicant that we're all exposed to because we all breathe air is air pollution. There are some very good studies coming out of Mexico City and are being replicated in the United States looking at exposure to air pollutants and problems with those air pollutants being deposited in the brain and in the circulatory system. There are certain pollutants in air, lead and iron, which are micromolecular. And by micromolecular, I mean they're small enough to get into our bloodstream and to actually enter into the brain. The studies, which are fascinating, have found that these particles can be deposited in as young as infancy in the brain and can lead to increased risk for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. And so, especially Mexico City, one of the most polluted cities in the world, they found that this process, which can lead to neurodegenerative disease, which are epidemic in our culture right now, can start early on. They've compared the brains of these urban born and urban living individuals with the brains of people who've lived in non-urban environments out in the country where this exposure does not occur. This is traffic-related exposure. This is really just another advertisement for making sure that your indoor air is clean. And the only way to do that right now, especially for those living in urban environments, is to get an air filtration system. And of course, the most crucial time to have this air filtration and to have clean air is when you're sleeping. Because the time when your body is asleep is when your body is repairing. And I mean all the organs in your body, the brain, the pancreas, the adrenals, the liver, the intestines, etc., the muscles, all go into repair state at night. And so bad stuff goes out, good stuff comes in. Does not happen as effectively if you're not breathing clean air. And so that's why in environmental medicine, we really support patients to create what's called a bedroom sanctuary. A bedroom sanctuary is no electronic devices at night, so no tablets, no phones, no computers in the room, blackout curtains if needed, so that there is no light coming in that will disrupt your normal sleep rhythms, and no toxicants. No toxicants means no plug-in air fresheners, no furniture made out of pressboard, because that off-gasses formaldehyde, very damaging to the nervous system and the lungs, and, if possible, quiet. We need to protect ourselves from the toxicants that are neurologic toxicants, neurotoxicants that we're exposed to in our indoor environment.
How mind-blowing is that? I would bet that you've never considered your house to be full of toxins. And what about the rest of the time we spend outside the house? A lot of that time is spent with other people. As you know from the previous episode, relationships are very powerful. Some of our experts even believe that failing in this area can be just as dangerous as toxic chemicals. Stay with us to learn the biggest regrets of people passing away and discover the best remedy to relieve anxiety.
The topic of aging is all over the place, I think, right? So aging originally meant that you live longer, right? But we care way more about the quality of life. Now, I used to be in palliative care, which means that all I talked to were people who were dying. I learned a lot from that. A lot of those things I want to share with you today and how that's really allowed me to define what aging really is. I asked everyone who are dying, what are your biggest regrets in your life? What did you wish that you knew like 10 years ago? No one regrets working too little. Everyone regrets working too much. And everyone's main regret is that they haven't had enough time to develop relationships with those that they love. Or the relationships that they developed weren't genuine enough. And when people are met with an end date, which means they know that they're going to die, all resentment is let go. These are some of the happiest people I've ever met. These are people with end-stage cancer diseases, some with dementia, some with lung disorders. And so for them, aging isn't time. Aging is, oh, I wish I can go back 20 years ago and talk to my son or daughter or ex-wife or whoever it is, right? So the regrets really lie in what happens in a previous timeline. The concept of aging, for me, in that arena completely changed because my thought process about aging is purely dependent on relationships. How powerful of a relationship can I develop within my lifetime? And the more powerful those relationships are, the less regrets I have at the end of my life. And I think that aging gracefully has to do with that. So it's not just time is a part of it, but it's also the quality of life. And that quality of life is purely dependent on the relationship we have with ourselves and with other people as well. We also have to recognize that our relationships with ourselves and the people that are around us have already been knocked into our heads probably since we were 2 to 3 years old, since we were little kids, right? And sometimes the things that we were taught when we were younger no longer serves us well later on in life. Our belief systems are built through traumatic events of our parents and the people who are around us, right? Those events create traumas, what I like to call micro traumas, and these micro traumas shape the way our personalities are and the way that we develop relationships and our entire belief system. If you're one of those people that you recognize that your belief systems may no longer serve you because it came from someone else, like a parent or a grandparent or someone who raised you, then it's okay to let go of those belief systems. Now, why did I say that? Because I learned that from people who are actually dying. When people get an expiration date, they all of a sudden become acutely aware of what they want to do for the rest of their lives. If people don't have an expiration date, there's a serious lack of awareness of what they want to do for the rest of their lives, unless we create our future and what it looks like. So the secret to aging is creation of what your future looks like. Visualize it, think about it, and going for the things that you want to do. If you currently have regrets right now in life, and there's 1 or 2 things you can say to somebody to negate that regret, just go ahead and do it. You know, our egos are so high these days, and it's because we built systems around it to avoid the trauma that we had in the past. A lot of it is in our subconscious mind. We have mind-body medicine, and these are structures that are set up to help people recognize maybe this trauma in their subconscious. And these are the people who have the best outcomes, whether it's autoimmune disease and mental health and brain health and stuff like that. They have significantly improved outcomes, like medical outcomes, that we can see in blood work and numbers. And a lot of it is because their belief systems have changed. That's a very powerful story to take away of how we can go into life always on the go, 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 but that creates destruction when it comes to aging, because as the mother ages and if nothing changes, that's her perpetual mindset. That mindset, her kids are going to inherit for their children. So this is what causes generational belief systems to create a very much larger system where we have generational trauma that's transferred from one generation to another. Because the reality of aging is not about us as humans. The reality of aging is we want to be able to enjoy life, yes, but we want to be able to pass on a legacy. And that legacy is determined by our actions, our relationships. So part of my definition is, what is the next generation or 6 generations going to think of me? And am I transferring traumatic things generations down as well?
The secrets of the longest living people on Earth. You know, there's some obvious that folks have heard, and it bears repeating, because what is knowledge? Is knowledge something we know in principle, or is it something we're actually doing in our lives in fact? All right, so everyone knows eat your veggies. Okay, that's a universal amongst all the longest lived people. And I can tell you that's the one thing that many, if not most people, are not yet doing today, period. But we've heard that before. Nonetheless, it's true. They're loaded with phytonutrients. Eat a range of different vegetables and fruits. That's standard fare. Get your movement in, get your exercise. Frankly, get off your butt. It's so terrible for you if you want to live long and well. You need to get off your butt. The couch is the enemy. The desk, sitting there all day, if that's what you do, is the enemy. Get your movement in. That's a standard with these societies that are the longest lived on Earth. However, there's a few that come to mind for me that you don't hear as much about. One of those is the socialization aspect. You don't hear enough about this. We human beings are social creatures. And even pre-pandemic, there was already a loneliness epidemic, not just here in the United States, but throughout the Western world. And they have done studies showing that it is as bad for you as any other form of toxin that you're on overload with, feeling lonely. And by the way, lonely is not the same thing as solitude. Solitude can be great for you. Lonely is a feeling like I've got nobody that I can really connect with. This is deadly, in fact. I honestly would rather smoke a pack a day than have that feeling on an ongoing basis, because that is deadly for human beings. And people, when they've done these studies, it's not just people living alone. Married people are at epidemic levels of feeling lonely. Young people, old people, everywhere in between people. This is a huge issue right now. And this is an area, again, where when people hear this, they nod in principle, I get that idea. But in fact, so many people that I've impacted and worked with are not taking steps to actually take action in that area. It's relatively easy to take action on eating more veggies, or at least to try. We get that. Okay, we're going to try. This is just as important. If you feel lonely on a routine basis, I promise you, there's probably nothing more important you could do than to go and find ways to communicate and socialize and have some form of depth with some people. There are ways to do this. Now, if you are homebound, I like to try to think about everybody. And if you're homebound, well, that's one of the positive sides then of social media. Now, social media has all kinds of ills associated with it as well, and it certainly does. There are some great groups out there. There are some great organizations or groups on Facebook and all these other sites where it is a positive environment, where people are nurturing and supporting one another. That's part of the aspect of socialization. So if you cannot get out of the house, I do recommend that. If you can get out of the house, get out of the house. Go, join different clubs, try different hobbies. There's groups out there at your local library, wherever it may be. Go, find and engage with other human beings, find shared interests, try new things. For neuroplasticity, it serves two purposes, actually. You're getting your socialization in and you're expanding your brain, keeping your brain healthy by trying new things. So that's a huge one that we have seen across cultures. Who are the longest lived peoples on earth? They are very social. One element of social that is mission critical is laughter. This is the one that doesn't get the spotlight and needs the spotlight. Why can you never trust an atom? Because they make up everything. I'm constantly squeezing little dad jokes like that when I discuss health and wellness with people for two reasons. Number one, because I'm a goof and I'm a dad and I tell dad jokes, but also because laughter, as the saying goes, actually is some of the best medicine. And we have downplayed that, especially in the society we live in today, especially in this world that seems so high anxiety and so tense. And I'm got to say it, I don't care if you're way on the left, way on the right, anywhere in between. When you watch the news, the sky is falling. It's just perpetuating this feeling of high anxiety, no matter what your political and personal beliefs may be. I would advocate people to turn down the volume and the frequency on things like the news. Meanwhile, what that has done is made laughter almost kind of a sin to some people, or something that's extremely downplayed. And I'm in my 50s. And I can tell you in my lifetime, and older people than me have verified this, there used to be far more emphasis on laughter and joy. All right? In the world we live in today, especially behind these walls and closed doors that we all live in, not only are we not socially engaging, but we're not laughing, and we're not laughing with one another. If you really honestly want to live long and well, find every way possible to laugh as often as you can, ideally with other people there as well. That would be the number one thing I advocate to you. Hippocrates, 1,000 years ago said, basically something akin to all health begins in the gut, and that's where laughter begins, in the gut. It's really kind of the same thing.
The same principles apply to every relationship we have. Feeling understood, appreciated, and listened to should be universal in every interaction we have. But the world isn't perfect. A lot of patients complain that their doctor just doesn't have the time or interest to pay more attention to their case. But we're here to tell you that attentive, compassionate doctors do exist. Just sit back and see how Dr. Jill Carnahan changes the world one patient at a time.
Many of the patients that I see have chronic and complex issues, and they've been around the medical system. And many times they've had lab tests or things where doctors told them, oh, you're fine. And they start to question themselves and they start to wonder, am I crazy? What's going on here? I don't feel well, but the doctor says I'm fine. We call that medical gaslighting. And the thing about that is it starts to diminish that patient's sense of self and their ability to be confident in what they feel or what they think. They start to say, oh, well, if the doctor says I'm fine, I must be fine. There must be something wrong with me because I don't feel well. The way that I counteract that is creating an environment where that patient can come in and be seen for themselves and know that the moment they walk in the door, they matter, that there's hope for healing, and that they are important and they're valued. Simple things like bringing them a glass of water in a wine glass, where they're like, oh, wow, this is special. It makes them feel special and seen and heard. Sitting with them and asking them to tell me their story. What happened? When did it start? Where were you born? And what led up to these events? Do you remember if there was a time when you felt well? When was that time when things changed? What are your symptoms? And listening and really hearing them and acknowledging that suffering, just giving them this envelope or this place where they can be seen and heard and listened to, that's the start of healing, because all of a sudden they feel validated. And at the core of that method is really just love. When we love people, we give them the chance to transform into the very best version of themselves. But that can only happen in the container of unconditional love and acceptance. So when they walk in and they know they're not going to be judged, they're not going to be criticized, they're not going to be told they're crazy, they're just going to be heard. I can't tell you the number of times over and over and over a patient will be in tears as they're telling their story and saying, no one's ever asked me that. No one's ever listened to that part of my life. Oh, you think it's relevant that my mother was alcoholic and abusive? No one's ever asked me that part of the history. And what I find is I listen to them as a human being, not just their medical symptoms, but their life. They feel seen and they feel heard and they feel validated. And I've learned over time that no one can truly heal or become resilient until they feel embodied and they feel valued and they feel loved. That's the foundation of all healing. I had a young 40-something woman come to my office about 7 years ago, and she came with her partner in a wheelchair. She had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I remember the first visit, she was kind of harsh. She said, Dr. Jill, do you know how many doctors I've fired? And she gave me the 3rd degree, and I was kind of like, oh no, what's going to happen here? But what I've learned over time is some of those people that come up with their guard and the most aggressive manners, they're the ones who've been hurt, and they're the ones that have been neglected, and they're the ones where the system has failed them. So I saw past that, and I just gave her space to vent and to talk about her illness, and I did my very best to just remain loving and give her a space to know that she was loved and heard unconditionally. And we started on a journey over the last several years. About a year after our first visit, after several interventions with nutrition, diet, and lifestyle with that foundation of unconditional love, she came back with a walker, without her wheelchair. And then several years later, she came back with a cane. And on her way out, she was so proud to show me, she left her cane on the couch, and she walked out with her husband's hand without any sort of aid. And since then, I've seen her. She can freely walk without a cane. She can move about. And what's happened in that relationship between doctor and patient, she sends me postcards from her trips around the world. She sends me birthday cards. She'll buy me gifts in Japan and all kinds of wonderful things. And she is a patient, but first of all, she's a human being who I love and I become a friend to. But it all started with being heard and then acknowledging her suffering and giving her a place where she could take this path and be given the tools to have health and longevity in all that she does.
There is a very important point that Dr. Carnahan made at the end. We are all human beings, and despite all the technology and advances, we should never forget that. Over the years, we've come up with so many tools, medicines and therapies to better our health and fight premature aging. But one age-old medicine seems to have been forgotten these days, and that's nature itself. Anytime, anywhere, we can still connect to our roots and utilize the healing power of nature. And it's not a placebo. There is a scientific explanation for why our surroundings can fix our imbalances, which you are about to hear.
So one of my favorite tools for healing is actually time in nature. And nature is just a perfect metaphor for life. Nature is healing, it's regenerative, there's beauty and death in nature, there's beauty in new life in nature, and you get to witness all of it happening simultaneously. So I love spending time outdoors. It's actually one of the therapies that we recommend to our clients. And what's really neat about being in nature is you get to breathe fresh air, especially when you're in the woods. And with every step that you take, you're actually kicking up spores. And these spores and these microorganisms, when we inhale them, actually enhance our immune system, they enhance our own microbiome, and they help improve our quality of life. And in fact, in certain countries like Japan, forest bathing is actually a prescription that cancer patients get in order to improve their overall health and wellness. If we want to feel balanced, we want to surround ourselves and be immersed in an environment that is balanced. And so a lot of people, they will go through nature, right? They'll go for a run in the woods, which I think is a great place to start, or even a walk in the woods. But what I encourage people to do is settle into the forest, right? Spend some time there, sit down, breathe in the fresh air, observe the fauna, the trees, the animals, and bring yourself present into that moment, because you can really get into deep states of meditation and tranquility when you do that. And you always feel better when you do something like that. So nature is one of our greatest teachers, but it's also one of our greatest healers as well. The sun is so important, and it's often never really considered when we talk about health and wellness, but it's one of the most vital things when it comes to setting our circadian rhythm. Our circadian rhythm is the rhythm of our hormones each and every single day. So for example, we make different hormones and neurotransmitters in the morning to get our day started, and we make different neurotransmitters in the evening in order for us to unwind and actually be able to get to sleep at night. So one of the things I encourage people to do is get outside first thing in the morning. Even if you're checking your phone first thing in the morning, do it outside, because you're going to get the beautiful benefits of the sun. When we get outside in the morning, we actually increase something called dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that gets us off of our butt to actually do stuff. Dopamine helps us stay focused, and it also helps us feel a sense of reward. When we have low dopamine levels, we oftentimes are easily distracted. We lose our focus, we don't feel a sense of reward, and we turn to foods or other addictions to actually fill that gap. Another thing that happens when we're out in the sun is we actually increase circulation. We increase nitric oxide levels, and nitric oxide actually helps us circulate blood, and it dilates our blood vessels so that we can increase blood flow to parts of our brain and really throughout our entire body. Nitric oxide also naturally helps us lower blood pressure, and it's an antiviral and antibacterial. It actually kills viruses on contact. So whatever we can do to increase our nitric oxide levels is going to be vitally important to improving our quality of life and our length of life as well. And it's as simple as getting out in the sun in order for us to do that. What's also interesting about the sun is we've adapted with the sun. Different times of the day, the sun is at different positions in the sky, and the positioning of the sun in the sky actually changes the chemicals in our body. So when the sun is at the sunrise, for example, at the horizon in the morning, it increases dopamine levels. When the sun is above us midday, it actually increases serotonin levels. And serotonin later in the evening turns into melatonin, assuming we have the right lighting situation. When the sun sets, it actually initiates a process of helping us release melatonin. And melatonin isn't just to help us fall asleep. Melatonin is actually one of our most important immunomodulating hormones. It actually is responsible for helping us fight infections and fight diseases. After the sun goes down, there's no overhead lighting. However, in our modern day society, most of our lighting is overhead, and that tells our brain that it's still the middle of the day, so we don't make the chemicals that we would need to in order to have a good night's rest. So what we encourage people to do is change the light bulbs in their home, turn on red bulbs in the evening, and if they can, have those light bulbs coming from the ground up. By simply doing that, the light hits the back of our retina, hits the top of our retina, and signals to our brain that it's time to unwind. What you'll also notice is that a fire starts off as yellow, then orange, then red. And that's actually significant because that will tell our body that it's time to wind down, and that will further increase the levels of melatonin production as well.
Light has been shown to help in the aging process in many ways. So there are photoreceptors that we are just starting to understand on most of our cells. A great example about light is when my daughter asked me to quiz her for an exam, and when she said it was about the mitochondria, I was all in. So she handed me the packet, and I opened it up, and it was all about the plant. So when I said, Jordan, why are you giving me something about a plant? I thought it was on the mitochondria. She's the one who pointed out to me, hey mom, the chloroplast, which is how the plant gets energy, and the mitochondria look exactly the same. And I looked at the pictures and I was like, wow, this is important. I don't know why. I'm going to put it over here in my head. And a few months later, I was listening to a lecture and they were talking about the impact of light through the eyes, especially the early morning light, and how it impacts the mitochondria positively. And the person who was teaching it said, well, just take a look at the chloroplast. It looks exactly the same. So I tell people, when you think about what is going to help your mitochondria in general, what helps a plant? So especially broad spectrum light, but there are some wavelengths of light that really help even more, like especially red light therapy. What else helps a plant? Grounding, being in the earth. So we now know if we put our feet in the earth, there's electrons from the earth. We have acupuncture points in our feet that connect us. That helps our mitochondria. Talking nicely to plants, and water and oxygen. So we can kind of take a simple cheat sheet and just look at our plant and provide the same things to us, which is going to help with longevity.
One of the best ways that we can immediately shift and work with our mindset and our spirit is to actually connect back to the planet that we live on. And there's a few easy ways that we can do. One is grounding, which is literally just walking barefoot on the ground. It really benefits our body energetically. Another is to be around water. We are made up of water, and so just looking at water, listening to water sounds is very healing for our body and can really be very settling. And then my third is forest bathing, which I love. Just spending time in nature. Even if you live in an urban environment, getting out and being among the trees and the flowers and the plants is very healing to us.
Being around nature and experiencing it in the moment can be therapeutic and ultimately can prevent all the disease and imbalances. When it comes to toxic burden and detox, I strongly encourage you to watch Zonia's other 7-part docuseries called Toxin Free, in which 33 of America's leading environmental medicine doctors and health experts reveal groundbreaking information about our dangerous toxic exposure and what we can do to break free from the damage. Or check out our health show on Zonia called Reinventing Detoxification, Proven Ways to Eliminate Toxins. This engaging show will give you more action-based tools on how to tackle toxic load. What's even better is that you can enjoy these invaluable docuseries and health shows 100% risk-free for 7 days. Join Zonia for as low as $10 a month, risk-free with our 7-day money-back guarantee. Once you've registered, a world of health knowledge awaits you. With over 1,000 health bites and several full-length docuseries at your fingertips, you can explore a wide range of topics: detox protocols, innovative therapies, nutrition education videos, captivating cooking shows, transformative hypnotherapy, guided meditation sessions, and so much more. Investing in your own health has never been so affordable. We've got you covered, regardless of what your health concerns, age, or body condition are. I urge you to take a minute to immerse yourself in the abundant content available on Zonia and get on-demand access to all 10 episodes of Ageless before the end of this free screening. And if you find being a member of Zonia doesn't do everything I promised you, just send us a message and we will refund you every penny. So there's really nothing to lose. A friendly reminder that if you decide to become a member after the free screening of Ageless ends, you'll still have access to over 1,000 health bites on Zonia and a wide range of additional resources, but the Ageless docuseries will be gone. This is why I strongly recommend that you try out Zonia as soon as possible to get access to crucial knowledge about how to activate your renewal pathways and start living the best possible life imaginable. In the next episode of our docuseries Ageless, we'll share the latest prevention techniques to free you from the pattern of bad health. From glowing skin to a strong body and full vibrancy, both now and in the future, our experts will give you the solution. Knowing how essential this advice is, you know you cannot afford to miss this. I hope to see you soon, but until then, join the discussion and let us know what you think in the comment section below. As always, I wish you a smooth and successful journey towards health and longevity, my friend, and I will see you in the next episode of Ageless. Cheers.